it forward. So let's get started. My name is Shelley Willis. I'm the Senior Director of Collective Impact here at Workforce Central, and I am your master facilitator for this wonderful group body of individuals and community change makers. So thank you for joining us for our November bi-monthly meeting. If you do not know, the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force meets bi-monthly, where there is a much needed thought partnership, putting things into practice around our specific areas of the lens of equity, our Speakers Bureau, and our collaboration for a cause initiatives that you'll hear about later. And it is also a space where we can lean into and embrace the changes that we are so intentionally making in our own communities, whether it be in our office space or in our community spaces where we live and thrive. Everything that you gather here, you put into action where you are. So you take what you learn from here and you roll that into action in your workplace. You take what you've learned from here and you take it into the social constructs where you reside, any social circles you belong to, your community that you're active in, wherever you are, whatever you gather from here, whatever you collect, whatever you learn. The next step for you to take is to then put those things into action, find a way to build, find a way to evolve. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff so that he can do our land acknowledgement, and then we'll just roll through to introducing from Jeff to Tamar so that he can introduce our speaker of the month. We are honoring Native American Heritage Month this month, and we have a great speaker who's going to present to us today. So Tamar will introduce her. Jeff will be followed by Tamar. Welcome to the Pierce County Community Engagement Task Force November meeting.
Thank you, and welcome back, Shelley. We have missed you since July. Okay, let's see. Today's land acknowledgement. We pay our respect to the elders, both past and present, who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We also express our respect for all other displaced Indigenous peoples who call Pierce County home. These are the original homelands of the Nisqually, Puyallup, Squaxin, Steilacoom, and Muckleshoot. It is important to move beyond acknowledgement and reflect on your own history that brought you to this place. This land acknowledgement is one small step in an ongoing commitment to improve our support of Indigenous communities in the area. Thank you.
Oh, is it me? Oh man, what's going on? What's going on? I feel good. You know, I got the squad out. Man, it's just a beautiful thing. I sat and honestly, Shelley, I didn't realize we ain't had you since July. Like, that's crazy. Like, just knowing that you haven't been here. A lot has changed for a lot of you guys that are on here with us right now. Of course, you guys know that. Going into every other month, we had chose to do that really so we can just focus on the work and handle business. Like Shelley said before, you know, when we have these meetings, it's just for us to grow together, learn together, be with each other, but just take the knowledge that we learn in this room, in this platform, and just take it back out to our communities. You know, I mean, I know everyone's on their journey, everyone's changing the world, everyone's trying to do these things and trying to do them together. And that's the big thing about this platform is we have the opportunity to do these things together. So you are not by yourself. You are not trying to change a community that we know that we can't change one person, but we can change it as a collective. And that's what this unit is about. Today, I am so honored to be able to introduce our guest speaker today. When I first met her, I got mad, and I usually don't get mad when I got to hang up the phone with people because you guys know I'm a talker, but I got mad because, you know, it was a last minute, just boom, I called and she answered, and all of a sudden I didn't want her to stop talking. I just got excited about it because her energy, what she brought, the power was absolutely amazing. So when she said that she would come and talk to us in recognition of Native American Heritage Month, I was so honored, so excited. And, you know, honestly, it was, hey, bring your truth. That's all we want to know. We just want to know the truth and what it looks like and how we're moving. So with that said, I want to personally introduce Kimber Starr. You'll see what I'm talking about when she gets on here. But Kimber, thank you so much for being here with us. And I know I put a lot of pressure on you, but trust me, the energy is there. So Kimber, welcome to the group. Hey, meet Kimber Starr, and just hold on to your seats.
Well, that was quite an introduction. I hope I can live up to that. My name is Kimber Starr. Talking about Native American Heritage Month. Here's the neato presentation that I put together. And if you want to flip to the next slide, I don't know if many of you know why we celebrate Native American Heritage Month or how it got started. It actually got started from the Boy Scouts, started an American Indian Day. Dr. Arthur Parker, Seneca Indian, who was director of the Museum of Arts and Sciences in Rochester, New York, persuaded the Boy Scouts of America to set aside a First Americans Day. And that in 1915, the annual Congress of American Indians Association approved the plan to have an American Indian Day. And it's been bounced around to May and sometimes in September, sometimes only on what we used to call Columbus Day. A lot of places are doing that. But in 1990, President George Herbert Walker Bush approved a joint resolution designating November 1990 as National American Indian Heritage Month. So that's how this whole thing got started, and why I'm here to talk to you today. I want to go to the next slide. So. Actually, I probably should have started with this. Oswego. This is my language. Cherokee. I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, descendant of Muskogee Creek. The symbols that you see next to the phonetic pronunciation of hello in Cherokee is right there at the top, and then you'll also see the syllabary language of what Cherokee Nation, and actually Cherokee isn't Cherokee in Cherokee, it's Salagi. So just throwing that out there. I was born on the Cherokee Reservation and raised on the Creek Reservation in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which, if you don't know, pretty much all of Oklahoma is a reservation. And the major urban centers of Oklahoma City and Tulsa sit across multiple reservation lines. I am third generation urban native. I am a 30+ year organizer, even though I'm only 44. I'm executive director of Tahoma Community Land Trust. I'm a Pierce County Planning Commissioner for District 5, Realtor Board member for Tacoma Community Redevelopment Authority Board. Want to go to the next slide. Oh, and I'm also a candidate for a Master's of Public Administration at the University of Washington, because being a single mom with 2 kids, I don't have enough to do. So going way back, because I'm gonna talk about the history from the Native lens as I move through this. But one of the really important things to point out is that the Iroquois Confederacy was founded in 1142, and it is the oldest living participatory democracy on earth. And a lot of what our Constitution is made of took from those ideas of the Iroquois Confederacy into the Constitution, which now becomes the United States. And there's a lot of concepts that are associated with Iroquois Confederacy that are throughout pretty much all Native nations here on Turtle Island. Turtle Island is what in Native culture is commonly referred to as America. The United States, Mexico, even some people even say that it's 2 turtles with South America and North America, but we refer to it as Turtle Island. So next slide. One of the principles out of the Iroquois Confederacy that rings true with me is the seventh generation principle. So the seventh generation principle is a principle that is based on a philosophy, the ancient Haudenosaunee philosophy, that the decisions that we make today should result in sustainable world 7 generations into the future. And that's really important because, to me, because when I trace back my ancestry, my lineage, I am the 7th generation since the Cherokees were removed and death marched on the Trail of Tears to what is now modern day Oklahoma. And so the decisions that I make today, the actions that I take today affects a child that I will never know, an ancestor that I will never see. It's that concept of planting a tree that you know you will never sit under its shade. So Wilma Mankiller is one of my idols and an ancestor. So in Iroquois society, leaders are encouraged to remember 7 generations in the past and consider 7 generations into the future when making decisions that affect the people. That was one of her quotes and one of her guiding principles of her leadership as the first female chief of the Cherokee Nation. Next slide. Okay, so here's the fun and possibly ugly part. So a lot of people believe that natives were savages, uncivilized, and there weren't many of us at all when the settlers first got here. But prior to 1491, we had well-organized tribal societies, well-organized trading and intertribal bartering throughout the Americas, throughout Turtle Island, and we flourished. But in 1492, I'm sure as you, and we also did a lot of intermingling with Vikings across, especially the eastern seaboard. There's lots of historical evidence of that. But in 1492 is when the first European settlers arrived in North America. And when they did, they brought with them diseases that our people had never been exposed to, and violence. And they killed an estimated 90% of the native populations that they encountered. There were millions of us prior to colonizers coming here. And 90% of the native populations that existed on Turtle Island were killed within, between 1492 and 1599, completely devastating, breaking up our governments, our trade routes. It was exceptionally devastating, which then set us up for invasion from all directions, stolen lands, stolen peoples. That was from 1600 to 1699. Spanish, French, Dutch, English colonists continued invading native lands. Tribes navigated competing foreign interests while maintaining their sovereignty through treaty negotiations. My tribe actually tried to fight on the side of the English during the Independence War, because their interests were better aligned with the English than it was with the rebellion. And there's lots of instances of that where the tribes tried to figure out how they could retain their sovereignty as a nation and fight back against people taking from them. So from 1700 to 1799, there were a lot of strategic alliances and treaties, broken treaties, as the US government first started to take shape. Native tribes formed alliances amidst international battles on their lands while facing enslavement and continued land disposition. 1800 to 1827 is when the sovereign nation era ends. The new United States government continued its expansion, completely disregarding treaties and launching a civilization campaign because there was this thing that we were somehow savage and not civilized. And there was an enormous amount of Native genocide that happened at that time, whether it was through starvation or just outright massacres. That was pretty endemic across the United States. And then next slide is, so Indian removal era is where my ancestral history picks up. There's not anything on my Cherokee side of the family prior to when we were removed from Georgia, what is now modern northern Georgia and Tennessee. And during the Indian removal, my tribe was actually split in two. One of my sorry, if I read the chat, then my mind just kind of goes whoop. So the tribe was split, and the US government made a deal with with a small group of people in the tribe that they would give up their claim to being Cherokee if they would be able to keep their land. And then the rest of the Cherokees who did not sign on to that agreement would be death marched to this new barren land in Oklahoma. What ended up happening to those who signed away their ancestral rights to continuing to be claimed as Cherokee, they ended up losing their land anyways, because settlers came in, they were murdered. There's, a whole thing that happened in the allotment eras. If they didn't lose it in between there, then their families, their ancestors lost it during the allotment era. The people who were the Cherokees who were, and it was Cherokee Creek, Seminole, like all the five tribes, major five tribes were marched in the dead of winter over a decade. And my tribe, 2/3 of them died. When they arrived in Oklahoma, there were no elders. There were no children. There were very few women of childbearing age. There were very few men. It was mostly teenagers who survived, who made it to Oklahoma on that long walk. And those are the only Cherokees that we had to rebuild with. And that's what we did. But it took hundreds of years to get to where we are today. So the reservation era begins. The reservations were essentially prison camps, right? Where they were put on land that wasn't farmable and didn't have any resources, supposedly. And they were given commodities, which I'll talk about that here in a minute. They were given commodities to survive so that they wouldn't starve to death, right? Because they couldn't hunt, they couldn't leave the property, they were basically locked up there. And that's that they were put there and left there until the settlers, the colonists, discovered that there was oil and all kinds of other resources and that the land could be farmed. And so then settlers began encroaching on more and more reservation land. We also were not allowed to self-determine. We weren't allowed to decide what we were going to do with our resources or our farming. In a lot of cases, we were unable to practice our culture, our dances, our language, which then leads to the boarding school and land allotment eras. So during land allotment, federal government came in and wanted to break up the collective nature of the reservation. And so what they did was they divided up plots of land. They divided up the entire reservation, all of the tribal lands. They divided them up into plots of land. And typically the plots of land that they divided them up had no resources, no timber, were hard to farm, but we're just going to give these Indians a plot of land so they can plow it and farm it, because that's what it means to be a civilized human being, is to farm. Just as an individual, farm your own land, take care of your own family on your one little spot. When they did this, though, many Indians work collectively, like the Iroquois confederacy. That is a string through all of our government, the way that we organize ourselves. It is collectively, so that way no one goes hungry, no one is homeless, and we take care of crime as well as a collective group. So when you separate out people to families individually to plots of land, they become weaker. And what ended up happening, and this ended up happening consistently across the United States, but particularly here in Tacoma, most of Tacoma is built on what was allotment land. What would happen is the family would be given, an Indian family would be given their allotment, and then a white settler would come along and may offer to pay them pennies for their land, that it was worth far greater than that. And if they didn't agree, they would harass and or murder their children and even themselves. And so when you go through the death records through the Puyallup tribe, there is an enormous amount of death certificates that say death by train, because what the settlers would do is when they would murder someone and they would sign over, they would fake the deed to the land and take their allotment and murder them, they would drop them on the tracks down now where the port is. So there's a lot of death certificates with the Puyallup tribe that has death by train, because that was easier to cover a murder. And so many families lost their land in this way, or sold it, and moved into living in abject poverty. At the same time is the boarding school era. The federal government would come and take our kids. They would take them as young as 4 years old, and they would take them to a boarding school where they were abused, molested, starved, around horrible diseases, and many of them died. Many never came home. And the boarding schools is something that we're all going to be hearing a lot about over the next decade, because as of right now, there of the 371 boarding schools across the United States, I believe that it's a total of 468 across the United States and Canada. There are 7,000 plus unmarked graves, some children as young as 3 years old, 4 years old. Our Department of Interior, Secretary Deb Haaland, has stated that the Department of Interior will be searching all former residential school sites to find our ancestors and bring them home. But in the end, they're saying that the numbers of unmarked child graves is going to be around 40,000. 40,000 people that were my grandmother's age that could have had 1 or 2 or 3 kids that will never get that opportunity. And the whole point of allotment and the whole point of boarding schools, because at boarding schools, you weren't allowed to use your language, you weren't allowed to practice your culture, you weren't allowed to sing your songs, to do your dances, was to take the Indian out of the man, kill the Indian, save the man. So that our culture was devastated, that our government systems of doing things communally were devastated when we were separated from our people. That was always the point, because our power as natives has always been in our collective joining together. When you separate people, it's easier to take things from them, like the resources, like land. Many in the Native community, I don't know of anyone who isn't a descendant or a survivor of the residential school system. My family, same thing. My grandmother escaped residential schools and never talked to being Cherokee again. There are people who, there are natives who still to this day cannot go to a powwow because they feel they were beaten so badly and abused for singing our songs, dancing our dances, that they can't even do it to this day. And residential, so a lot of these eras overlap. The last boarding school was actually closed in 1996. Like, that was a year after I graduated from high school. Like, this stuff is still pretty recent. So from 1934 to 1967 is the Indian New Deal, tribal termination, and urban relocation. So the Indian New Deal was the US government's attempt to get those natives who were left on tribal lands to run their own thing, run their own Bureau of Indian Affairs, while at the same time saying that they were inept because they were Indian, that they couldn't handle their basic signing contracts. We weren't allowed to sign contracts. We weren't allowed to make our own decisions. The Bureau of Indian Affairs controlled all of our resources and everything. And this was a move to try to get Native people to take care of some of that stuff while still continuing to control it. At this time, there were also several tribes that were terminated. Tribes that had been in existence that the US government says, sorry, you don't exist anymore. We're not going to recognize your sovereignty, and they dispersed all of their resources and funds, and won't recognize them through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Also, urban relocation was happening in the 40s and 50s. And that's where the US government would come to the reservation, and they would offer your dad, there's great jobs in the city, and here's a bus ticket for you and your whole family, and we give you first month's rent, and things will be so much better in the city than it will be as you're suffering in poverty, which was caused by the fact that it was essentially a prison camp that then got called a reservation, and all of the other stuff that was leading into it. Like, things will be much better if you live in the city, disconnected from your people, disconnected from your culture, disconnected from your tribe. It was very effective. That's also the reason why 71% of us are urban natives, living in urban environments like Tacoma, away from our families, but away from our kinship ties, away from our tribal lands. And a lot of us are kind of lost in the shuffle of the city, because how do I connect with other Cherokees? Like, there's not a meetup that I can go to. It's very effective to separate Native people from the kinship ties, which further weakens sovereignty. So now we're in what is referred to as the Indian self-determination and self-governance era. This is where the US government was like, all right, we need you guys to handle your own stuff, and started giving us more and more ability to control and make our own decisions for our tribes, for our people. Also, I'd like to note that natives across the United States did not get the right to vote. All natives in all places in the United States did not get the right to vote until 1965, which just seems insane. So during this Indian self-determination and self-governance era, you have a lot more Indians coming home and signing up on the rolls. My tribe, in the mid 80s, there was like 68,000. And by the early 90s, there was over 100,000 of us. Now there's 300,000 on the rolls and probably about 850,000 Cherokees across the world, scattered all over the place. Economic development and housing and health are main things that just pretty much every tribe invests in and in their people. And we do a really good job at it, especially when you look at COVID vaccines and the rate at which natives are vaccinated among other race groups. That is something that we do very well. We've also had a resurgence in fighting back against the black snake. So the Dakota Access Pipeline, so that you can't, the federal government can't put oil pipelines across our reservation land, across our tribal lands. And we have fought back against that in many places across the nation on our tribal lands. To protect the environment, to protect our water on our reservation lands. And that all comes from being able to self-govern and building power within our tribe. All right, next. Oh, well, before we go to the next one, so there's a link in this that is this timeline that I took most of this information from. It is extensive. So if you want to spend some time with that, reading that, I think this is like, there's like 4 dissertations of information on just that timeline. So if you want to check that out later, it's really amazing. All right, next slide. So, Chief Wilma Mankiller. So I'm going to talk today about what I know as a Cherokee. And one of the most important figures in the Cherokee history and culture is Chief Wilma Mankiller. So she was born in Tahlequah in 1945 in the Cherokee capital, Tahlequah, Oklahoma. She was the 6th of 11 children. When she was 11, her family moved to San Francisco as part of the Bureau of Indian Affairs relocation policy, which aimed to move Indians off of federally subsidized lands with the promise of jobs in America's big cities. She first developed her social activism when a dramatic event changed her life. In 1969, a group of American Indians, which was actually out of the American Indian movement, AIM, took over the federal penitentiary on Alcatraz, saying that it was a right of discovery. And they did this to expose the suffering of American Indians. Interesting fact, as this was happening in 1969, Alcatraz came off the tail end of something that was happening here locally, which is the fishing wars. So you have the Nisqually and the Puyallup were going out to fish, which their treaty provided for that they would get half the fish. And the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife came in and said, no, you can't do that. And so they started having these fish-ins where they basically would go out and fish and then they would get arrested. And they did this over and over and over again for many years. And it was one of the first Native protest movements, and it was happening at the same time that the Civil Rights Era was happening. And that is really one of the most amazing instances of the American Indian movement starting, was right here in our backyard. What Wilma says about the takeover of Alcatraz. So she was very young, but she learned how to be a community organizer there at Alcatraz through AIM. And you can see in these pictures, this is a picture of young Wilma, a picture of the of Alcatraz as it was being taken over. And they were there for like 18 months. It was not just a short, couple of weeks or whatever. They occupied for quite some time. And then here's a picture of her protesting with others. She's there in the back with the long straight hair. But what she says about it is when Alcatraz occurred, I became aware of what needed to be done to let the rest of the world know that Indians had rights too. So let's go to the next one. So now I'm going to cough a whole bunch. So this word, Gadduki, you'll see the Cherokee syllabary of what this word is in Cherokee. So what the term means in Cherokee language is working together, or cooperative language, or cooperative labor, mutual aid within a community. Originally, the Gadduki were people in the Cherokee community who helped others in a time of need. Like if someone fell ill or there was a death, they would come and comfort people with either food, company, they would harvest their crops, they would cut their firewood, they would help collectively people get by. Gadduki was a rallying cry of Wilma Mankiller. So Wilma moved from San Francisco, taking what she learned from the American Indian movement, and moved back to Tahlequah. Established a community resource department within the Cherokee Nation. And one of the first projects that she worked on was the Bell Community Water Project. And it was a community that did not have running water, did not have electricity, definitely did not have sewer. And the project was to bring water to the community, but not do it for the community, like come in and, bring all of but to get the community to dig the ditches themselves and lay the pipelines and teach them how to do that as a community for themselves, and then replicate that in other communities to bring water all over the Cherokee Nation. And the rallying cry was Gadduki, working together. And that is a key part of not only my tribe's culture, but also it is the founding principle that I was taught as a kid, as that community organizing is always the way to go, right? Like people working together as a community do more, go farther than people working individually. So Wilma Mankiller was successful in organizing the Bell community to install a 16-mile water line, bringing running water to this Cherokee community for the first time. She then coached Cherokees of the Bell community to teach other Cherokee communities to do the same. The Bell Community Water Project garnered national acclaim 40 years ago. Next slide. So Chief Wilma Mankiller was elected to serve as principal chief of the Cherokee Nation in 1985. She was the first female principal chief of any native tribe in the United States. She led for 10 years, guiding a sovereign nation whose population more than doubled from 68,000 to 170 during her tenure. We're now at about 350. She was a consensus builder with the federal government to build a pilot self-government agreement in the Cherokee Nation with the Environmental Protection Agency. And as the tribe's leader, she was both the principal guardian of centuries of Cherokee tradition and customs, including legal codes, and chief executive of the tribe with a budget that reached $150 million a year by the end of her tenure. Today, the Cherokee Nation has built on that, and we have everything from aerospace government contracts, food production. We have the only medical school that is built and solely run by tribes in the United States. We also have a long line of casinos and economic development opportunities in the state of Oklahoma and across the nation. That's the way that we build power, and we feed, clothe, and take care of our people. President Barack Obama said about Wilma Mankiller, as the Cherokee Nation's first female chief, she transformed the nation-to-nation relationship between the Cherokee Nation and the federal government, and served as an inspiration to women in Indian country and across America. A recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, she was recognized for her vision and commitment to a brighter future for all Americans. Her legacy will continue to encourage and motivate all who carry on her work. Another little fun fact, Wilma Mankiller and Gloria Steinem were chosen family, best friends. Yes, Native American culture has been matriarchal in nature. That's kind of where we resources and family lines go by. In most Native cultures, they go by the mother to the child, to the descendants, rather than patriarchal through the father. So yeah, that is very key. So it's unusual that the Wilma was the first female chief in 1985, that it took that long for us to get back to what we did before the settlers got here. So yeah, Gloria Steinem, Wilma Mankiller, like, go way back. They have been good friends throughout the entire women's movement. And there's a lot of really, yes, people can share this presentation. Okay, so next slide. Okay. So buffalo are really important to me, and they're really important across Indian culture. Even if you're not from a Plains Indian tribe, the buffalo means a lot. So it was really difficult to eradicate Plains Indians because they were very good at following the herds of buffalo and living off the land and using every part of the buffalo to survive. They were very, very good at that. So what the US government had to do was they had to kill their food source. So what the US government actually paid people to do, whether it was through the army or through paying, hunters to come out, they practically eradicated the buffalo across the entire plains to the point of almost extinction. You'll see here a picture of tons and tons of buffalo skulls. When I see that, I see starving dead babies, dying elders, who are hungry when I see this giant pile. And the phrase was, kill every buffalo you can. Every buffalo dead is an Indian gone, because by removing our food source, it decimated our ability to survive and forced us into compliance and living off of government subsidized land and essentially in prison camps. Interesting thing about buffalo, when they move in herds, they move in such a way that the white buffalo, which is the most sacred and easiest to kill, is in the center, if that is a part of that herd, surrounded by the red dogs or the calves, surrounded by the female buffaloes, and then surrounded by the younger males. And that's how they move across the plains in herds as a way to protect the things that are important, the children, the females, to be able to carry on the next line. So if you want to go to the next slide, there's another thing that buffalo do that I incorporate into my leadership strategy, and it's definitely a part of my my culture. But Chief Wilma Mankiller puts it very succinctly: cows run away from the storm while the buffalo charges towards it, and it gets through it quicker. Whenever I'm confronted with a tough challenge, I do not prolong the torment. I become the buffalo. Want to go to the next slide. All right, so let's talk about fry bread. I love fry bread. I don't know who doesn't love fry bread. So the thing about fry bread is it's not actually a traditional food. It's what we could make out of the government commodities that we got, right? You got a little bit of flour, a little bit of salt. You got some vegetable oil, definitely no dairy, because there's a whole bunch of natives that are allergic to dairy, myself included. And you throw together what you have, right? You're not going to get meat. You're not going to get, so you get this, you get these little commodities that aren't really healthy food, and you make with it what you got, right? So I've included a fry bread recipe here. However, I've been told by elders that they're going to slap my hands if I use a cup measurement and I don't use my hands. So that's the thing. You can't use any actual like measurements. You gotta be able to eyeball it. But there's a mentality that goes with this being the food of our oppressors, right? We took what we had and tried to make magic with it. You work with what you got and you try to make magic out of nothing. And that's something that I've tried to do many times. That, in fact, that tends to be, if there's an easy way to check the box and, you know, like, well, here's the instructions and you have all these parts. No, I'd much rather go out to the junkyard and source stuff, because that seems more interesting to me. Like that's like the guiding principle, using everything of what you have and making something really phenomenal out of it, is part of my culture and part of my leadership strategy. And it always cracks me up when people are just like, oh my gosh, fry bread's so great. Like, how do you make it and everything? And there's this meaning in it every time I look at fry bread, because it's something out of nothing, and it's something amazing out of nothing. So if y'all want to look at that, there's a recipe, but I didn't tell you to use teaspoons. So if you want to go to the next slide. Okay. So I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so this is my story. I lived in a neighborhood that only had one park. It was kind of on the working class side of Tulsa. And I love this park. This was like my one place to go, right? I would get on my bike that I had just learned to ride. And I would, boogie on down to the park. Parents had no idea where I was. It was glorious. And then the Memorial Day floods came. There was one really bad Memorial Day flood where most of Tulsa was underwater. Problem is that Tulsa is built on a river plain. So whenever the waters rise, it just goes everywhere, right? Because it's mostly flat. And there's a Mingo Creek that runs right by, one of the tributaries runs right by Norberg Park. So the city of Tulsa decided that it was going to be a good idea to take out this park and to lower it by 6 feet and essentially turn it into a retention pond. No tennis courts, no playground, no nothing, right? My park was going to be gone. So I, at 8 years old, was like, this can't happen. And so I got my scented markers and my scented stickers and a whole bunch of paper that had the little dot matrix things on the side of it. And I made flyers. And then I went door to door on my pink Huffy bike with the fluttery tassels, and went to every single door in the neighborhood and told people what was going on and how upset I was about this and that they should be upset too. And would you come and testify, as a part of, would you come and testify to the city of Tulsa and tell them that we want our park? I was 8 years old. Didn't have much of an idea what I was doing. Neither of my parents have been political. This is not, I just thought it was a good idea and I wanted to save my park. So I went and testified at the Tulsa City Council meetings to save the park, as well as many of my fellow neighbors. And the city of Tulsa was persuaded at that time to only partially lower the park and to replace the playground equipment, tennis courts, basketball courts, so that the park, for the most part, would be functional. It was kind of a little bit of both. But I was proud that I saved Norberg Park. And that was my first experience doing any sort of community organizing. So my mom, I want to go to the next slide. My mom thought it would be a good idea for me to go hear this woman chief of the Cherokee Nation. And so she took me to hear her speak when she was in Tulsa to speak. And when Wilma's speech ended, my mother pushed me in front of all the dudes with suits that were waiting to talk to the chief. And here I am in my popcorn sweater with my super bushy permed hair. And I talked to Chief Mankiller and I tell her about Norberg Park. And I tell her about going door to door. And I show her one of my flyers. And I tell her about how we saved the park. And she seemed very impressed. And then she asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I told her I wanted to be a veterinarian. To which she was like, oh, okay. I don't believe that was the response that she thought that she was going to get. But she leaned over and she got closer to my level. And she said to me, you will always do what is needed and where you are meant to be. And I've always taken that with me, that I can help not only my people, the people of my community, my family, and the 7 generations ahead by doing whatever is right in front of me. And that I am exactly where it is that I am needed and where I am meant to be. If you want to go to the next slide. I'm really happy I got through that without bawling. So one of the big things that I'm working on, this is actually the biggest thing that I've done in my career, is I started Tahoma Community Land Trust. As a realtor and advocate for affordable housing, there are a lot of tools in the toolbox for affordable housing that we're not using. And especially in Pierce County, we aren't using, we don't have a community land trust. Like, you can't swing a dead cat in King County without hitting a community land trust, but we don't have any of them here. So in June of 2020, I started Tahoma Community Land Trust with my chosen sister, Christy Keith, who it appears by election results is going to be an Edgewood City Council member this next year. So she and I started this together. And our mission is to expand and preserve housing and economic development opportunities, serving all levels below an annual median income, but with a focus on Black, Indigenous, communities of color, those with access needs, and low-income residents across Pierce County. How we do this is we acquire housing, land, and other critical communities serving real estate and steward it in trust to ensure that they may remain affordable forever. So I guess the quick and dirty way of saying how we do this is we get a piece of land that either has a property on it or needs to have something built on it. And we hold that land in a land lease for 99 years. And so when a person buys or moves into that particular property, that home, they are able to, they're able to buy it at 20 or 30% below what is currently on the market. And when they go to sell, they're able to recoup equity, to build equity, generational wealth, to build equity. And they sell it to another family or individual that also needs to, that fits within that same area median income. So that way that property remains affordably in perpetuity. Because right now, we have such an affordable housing crisis, it is exacerbating the homeless crisis, because what you have is you have a lot of units at the top end of the luxury market, but you don't have anything that's like in between for like missing middle income, which is what a community land trust usually, that's the sweet spot of what the issue that it most addresses is missing middle income housing. So teachers, firefighters, police officers, government workers that, 80% 50% area median income to 80% area median income is what this mostly addresses very well. So this goes on for up to 99 years, and that land lease is you can re-up it every 100 years. So like 200 years from now, our hope is to have 1,000 properties across Pierce County that are held affordably, so that we don't have the affordable housing crisis that we have right now. What we need to do to address the affordable housing crisis is, of course, build more homes and have higher density. And, there's a whole bunch of tools in the toolbox, and a community land trust is just one of those tools, but it removes the real estate from the speculative market. And then it is community controlled by the land trust, the community participants and residents of the community land trust. I hope I didn't get totally into the weeds there. One of the pictures I wanted to point out here that I included is the red line map of Tacoma. I'm not sure how much you guys know about redlining, block busting, and other sorts of super racist policies, housing policies of the 50s and 60s. But this, this map, essentially, the areas that are red, lenders would not lend in those areas. And I'm sure you probably know that the people that generally lived in those areas were Black, Indigenous, and people of color, which meant that they weren't allowed to buy homes. They were only allowed to rent. They weren't allowed to live in other communities across the city of Tacoma because there were racist covenants that were implemented into the deeds. Which we're just now starting to remove. They all have to be removed individually, but at least there's an outlet to be able to remove those racist covenants. But what it did is it kept Black people, it kept Native people, it kept, you know, people of color from buying homes and building that generational wealth. And when when people are unable to build that generational wealth, they're not able to send their kids to school. They're not able to start a business. They're not able to take care of themselves within the community. And so part of what we intend to do with Tacoma Community Land Trust is to address things like redlining and block busting and these horrible racist housing policies, and making Tacoma and the greater Pierce County a better place to live for all people. If you want to know more about Tacoma Community Land Trust, there is my the websites there at the bottom. And if we want to go to the next slide, if y'all are, I hope I haven't annoyed you too much, because I think this is my last slide. So the Native Peoples Caucus of Pierce County was started around June of 2020. There was actually, I was going through some things because that's when I founded Tacoma Community Land Trust, and then I also founded this, and yeah. So we are currently in the process of transitioning the Native Peoples Caucus of Pierce County to the Native Peoples Center of Pierce County. In King County, they have actually several locations for, there's the Seattle Indian Health Board, there's the Daybreak Starr Cultural Center, where Native people of all tribes can go, but we don't really have one of those like central locations for Native people to receive health services, connect with their tribes, connect with other Natives, have powwows. Like seriously, we need a powwow. And that's really, for me as an urban Indian, that's really frustrating because 71% of American Indians and Alaska Natives live in urban areas like Pierce County. And while Natives only make up 1% of the population, they make up 25% of the homeless population. And that goes back to Indian residential schools, relocation. Like that was always the point to separate us from our kinship ties and how we take care of each other. And that is the result of that. We are also often erased from public conversations on health and housing. Most of us are disconnected from our tribes and our communities. So I'm really excited about the direction that the Native Peoples Center is going, to have a place for all Natives to meet and connect with our community and to build political power and organize our community. So next slide. So Wado, thank you. It was an honor to share with you today about Native American Heritage Month, history through the Native lens, my heritage, my story, and how that impacts the decisions that I make and the actions that I take on behalf of seven generations into the future. Wado. All right, I should probably read the chat now, huh?
Tamara, I'm gonna let you kind of wrap it up before we transition. I need a moment. That was a beautiful, in-depth masterclass that people commercialize and pay thousands of dollars for, and you just blessed us with the most thoughtful and intentional journey. And I want you to know that we are honored to have you a part of our community. I want more. I don't even want you to stop. I want to commend you for being brave. And I want to celebrate and salute you for being a soldier. Because being and doing are two different things, but when combined, they are becoming. And that requires resilience. It takes time. It brings tears. And at the same time, it produces good crops. So I want to celebrate you and thank you, Ms. Kimber Starr.
Wado.
Wado.
Man, I can't even come back from that one. I'm sitting here thinking about things, and I'm like, man, I was in the back and I was chatting with some of the colleagues and friends on there, and I'm just like, just to hear history with so much knowledge that I just didn't understand. I had no clue about. It was just absolutely amazing. And as Shelley said, so blessed to just have you with us. Just seeing it through your eyes and being able to go on your journey with you, and just seeing what you went through and, how you became who you were with just sharing so much knowledge with us, which is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Just to go on your journey with you is just so cool. I know you're like, man, I hope I didn't take up the time. Like Shelley said, I could have went with you. I mean, it was just a journey that was just so cool. And I sort of felt like I got gypped, like, a time was put on you. And it's like, I wish you could have just told your story beginning to end. I know that there's so many things that happened in between. And, we can go back to the college years if we have to. I know there's pieces that I missed, and I'm just so intrigued about learning. And as we get to know each other more, just to be able to support the great things that you're doing in the community. I love the truth that you came with, just the honesty and the authentic, just you was absolutely amazing. So Kimber, thank you so much for just gracing us with your story, your life, your journey, the lens that you continue to strive through. It was just absolutely amazing. And I just want to tell you, thank you so much for just spending time with us today.
Wado, it was an honor.
Thank you. Oh, okay. So what I want everyone to do with intention is to just take a deep breath. Just take a moment and just literally, truly ground yourself. We just received such a blessing. And if you haven't already, just kind of lean back. I just need to kind of just take a minute and just kind of inhale that. And then just slowly exhale. And I just want you to do that a couple of times with me. Just to be grounded with intention. The atmosphere is already set. And I just want you to just let it absorb and soak in under the sound of my voice. Before we go to the next thing, I just want to give you some time to inhale and exhale. All right. With that, we are going to transition in our program, our monthly, bi-monthly meeting agenda. And I will turn it over to you, Jeff, to transition us through our initiative overview, progress, and needs.
Thank you, Shelley. All right. So we are going to start with lens of equity. And if anybody needs any information on these initiatives, it is definitely available on our website. Just kind of a quick overview. And if anybody would like to attend these meetings, you can definitely email in and let us know. The monthly newsletter that comes out also has information about these initiatives, and like I said, on the website. So if anybody needs any information as you're hearing kind of what's going on in these updates, please let us know, and we'll definitely help you get connected. So who is presenting for Lens of Equity?
I can jump on that if you want me to. I know some of my partners and stuff are down and out right now, so I can jump on, and if I do miss anything, Chloe or Krista, please jump in and let me know. But the Lens of Equity Summit is being put together as we speak. We are looking to be able to, for many of you that were part of the Lens of Equity mini series last year or earlier this year, that 4-part series that we actually did, and we took that journey together, we're actually looking at going bigger and bringing it live and in person, you know, with wanting to have classes and workshops and really making sure, again, that the DEAI journey stays to the forefront. We can't lose that momentum. It is something that we have to live with daily. And if it's just a period, you know, where when people are mad, we talk about it and want to change and do something, you know, it's absolutely pointless. So in this group specifically, we really keep that journey going. So next year, October 2022, we are looking to have the Lens of Equity Summit live and in person. A few things we're working on now is setting the location, so that way we can actually get a planner to assist that group and that committee to keep moving forward. The ask that I do have as we're building this is, you know, stay aware, stay present, because some great things are coming. If you have not gotten an opportunity to come to any of those meetings as they're building, please reach out. You know, your voices are very important as this is being built. It is a collaborative effort, and it's really going to represent who we are and allowing other organizations to come on that journey with us, but making sure that we do recognize that everyone has a different place that they are in this journey. There is no judgment. We have some at the very beginning. We have some people that don't even know what DEI is, you know, and we've advanced it, you know, to add access to that. So making sure that in that spot, everyone is welcome. Everyone can leave with something. Like I said, there is no judgment. So the Lens of Equity Summit 2022, keep an eye out for it. As soon as we lock down the date and the location, we will make sure that we send out save the dates to everyone. But if you are interested in being a part of that committee, joining that committee, building the dream with that committee, please reach out to Chloe, Carissa, or Krista, and definitely connect with them.
Perfect. All right, and we will move over to the Speakers Bureau initiative. Amanda, are you able to present on that?
Yeah. So with the Speakers Bureau, we've been putting a lot of our focus on, you know, promotion and how to get the word out there to set up events for the speakers. And we've recently brought in a few additional speakers as well that are being that are putting together their stories. So they shall be added to the website soon. And we have a speaking event coming up in partnership with United Way. We have 2 speakers that will be presenting on November 9th for a panel discussion at 10:30 at the Poverty to Possibilities Summit. So we're pretty excited about that. Big shout out to Mandy Lee with that for getting it all organized and set up. Oh, sorry guys. Sorry. She fell over, she's bad. So we also have done a lot of promotion within the Speakers Bureau itself. We had Nastasia kind of take a leading role in setting up our regular podcast premieres that we're doing in partnership with the Youth Action Board. And we had 2 speakers also become assistants as well. So that's progressing very beautifully. So yeah, we have a lot going on. And like I said before, you know, our main focus right now is just promotion and really getting that good foundation to get the word out. So definitely if you want to help out with that or have some kind of marketing experience, we could definitely use your help in the Speakers Bureau initiative meetings. So I think I pretty much covered it all there.
Yeah, Ed absolutely did a great job. Just to add on a couple of things too, just for people that don't know about the Speakers Bureau, this is free to organizations to take advantage of. So if you have a group of people within your organization or young adults or anybody that you would love to have a speaker come and share their story and speak on a specific topic, please let us know. We pay them from a donation fund that we have, so that way it's open to many more opportunities. And then I'll just say that we're entering kind of the second phase of the Speakers Bureau, and we're really looking to figure out you know, some impact moments, some things to take on, and then finding specific speakers for those moments, so that we can really start to make you know, some intentional impact in the community. So please let us know if you have any speaking engagements. Reach out to myself, Amanda, and then there's also information on the website with our speakers profiles. All right. The last initiative, collaboration for a cause.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Collaboration for a Cause is looking to do a winter warm-up 2021 FIFE edition. So anyone that is interested in participating in that, please feel free to reach out. Again, we're interested in doing a FIFE edition. So we are really having a hard time of locating our destination of where that event is going to take place. So our request today is if anyone has any resources or any connections to any locations in the Fife area that we could use a lot, or a location for about 2 hours to get resources into the hands of Fife residents in Pierce County, that would be amazing. For those who don't know, this is our 5th edition of Collaboration for a Cause, and it's literally exactly what it is. It's collaborating for a cause, supporting one another, and partnering with community members and resources to get those resources into the hands of the community. Collaboration for a Cause was created to bring resources and access to career pathways and community services to our community. As we all know, there's a lot of community members who are suffering from the pandemic. So we're really just trying to bring sustainable resources to community. We are no longer showing up with papers and flyers to hand out. We actually want to have tangible items. So we are looking for donations. If you have those resources, or if you have any connections to anyone that has resources, we are looking for winter coats. We are looking for gloves, scarves, hats, socks, PPP items, masks, hand sanitizer. And if you have resources and you would like to participate in this event, such as childcare, rental assistance, legal assistance, job opportunities, please contact myself. I will drop my information in the chat again. And then Kelly Blucher is also the lead on Collaboration for a Cause, and she can also be a contact for any connections that you have. And again, you don't have to be a part of Collaboration for a Cause to support the cause. We just really need help. And our biggest concern right now is identifying a location. We're having a really hard time locking a spot in. And also, I forgot to mention, we're looking to host that on Friday, December 3rd. Time is obviously to be determined because we don't have a location locked in. We've served over hundreds of families and community members over the last year, and we really just kind of want to expand our outreach throughout Pierce County and really get into larger communities. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Courtney. So as you can hear, there's a lot of stuff moving. And since there's been a lot of changes within the task force, the way to connect, if you're looking on how to connect, is to get involved with the initiatives. Real quick, I'm going to share my screen because I want to show you kind of an addition to the website that a lot of people probably don't know about yet. So when we're here on the website, this is the homepage. Under resources, there's a calendar. You can do a list view, you can do a month view, but the whole idea here is for everybody to stay updated on what's coming up. We have our Higher Pierce County events that are going on. We have the Collaboration for a Cause. This is where all the initiative meetings are happening too. So if you want to attend, this is a great spot to find it. And then let us know and we'll send you the Zoom link. And there's a ton of other stuff on here. So please stay connected to the website. Let us know which one you want to be involved in. You don't have to pick just one, but this is what we're moving with. And we'll pass it over to you, Shelley.
Great. Great. I love seeing and hearing the sharing. Great information in the chat. I do believe what Jeff will do after this recording is pull that information out of the chat and also share some of those key components with you that's being shared. I see some great, City of Tacoma currently has applications for small business recovery grants. Thank you, Carol, for sharing that. So these are all the updates. You've received all of the initiatives that we are working on and where we currently sit in doing this work. So what's next? What's next is we will reconvene and link up again and see you again, if not at one of our events, supporting one of the initiatives or on one of the meetings, supporting one of the initiatives. We will see you like this in January 2022. As I stated when I opened up, this is a time for harvest. This is a season to relook what you planted. If nothing came from that, what more work do you need to do in order to cultivate that soil so that something can grow? What are you pouring into it that will feed it, nourish it, and allow it to expand and become rooted in the soil in which you planted it? And how much intention is going behind the activities that you need to do in order for you to initiate action behind what you want to see? In order to get there, we have to do the work. So as long as you are invested in community, this is a space where you can learn, gather, and have thought partnership. And this is a space that will never, ever, ever be unsafe. And you don't have to worry about it being unsure or uncertain. It's a space to network and connect and learn more about the community you live in and thrive in, and how you can take that out and you can hit the streets to do some of this collective impact, thought leadership, thought partnership work. So I want you to keep that in mind as you go forward. When you occupy a space, you consume the oxygen in it, you own it, and then you take that energy out and you do something with it. So we want to keep you encouraged over the holidays. This is not an easy time of year for a lot of us. It tends to be a little bit harder and the need is always greater. So I want you to keep that in mind as you move forward. We will not see you again until January in this space, but we will see you in multiple spaces while you're out doing your community work. If there's anything that your organizations are doing, make sure you send that to Chloe, I guess, or Jeff, and they can get it out as well to the community, because we want to make sure that everyone has access to whatever you're doing and that we're sharing, liking, following as much as we can in order to get it out there. So in this new day of living and life and way of work, we want you to continue to thrive, keep your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health in check at all times, and make sure if any of those are out of balance, that you fall back for a minute so that you can refuel, and then bring your best self forward. With that being said, we thank you for joining us this month. We missed seeing you. I know I did. I hadn't seen you since July. I didn't know that. And I love being able to be a part of the work that we're doing. So I look forward to seeing you again in January. And I think after this, our next meeting is January 5th from 1 to 2 is our next meeting on January 5th, following, going into 2022. And then following this, all the co-leads are asked to stay on the call. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.